Hello, this is an assessment of a Bosendorfer 170 centimeters grand piano made in 1925. Now, we sold the piano in 2010 and the client's doing some renovation work on their house and has asked us to collect it, and while we have the piano, to do an assessment to see if there's any refinement work we might be able to do on it that will improve it. The casework of the piano is in readable condition. It wasn't repolished when we sold it. We made good the casework, so some bit of tidying up that we could possibly do that's dusty here. Obviously, that's something we would do, is to dust the piano and clean it generally inside and out. But if you'd like this improved, then I think probably the answer would be to repolish the whole piano, because we could certainly tidy it up a little bit, but repolishing it would be a wonderful way of improving it. If you want it to we can either polyester the piano or French polish. French polish isn't really that different from polyester when it's done black, and it's shiny black, so it's much more expensive, and normally would recommend modern polyester, but obviously French polish does look more authentic, but it does take longer and is more expensive to do. So just have a quick look round. I don't think there's any veneer missing. The legs don't quite line up here. We usually add a little shim on the top here. You could also take a little bit off to make them line up. If you're in the trade and would like to give your opinion of what you would do, that would be very helpful. Now, the key tops are not ivory key tops. I actually described them as ivory when the client bought the piano, which was a big mistake because it does look very authentically done, but I don't think they're ivory. I'm pretty sure they're not. There's no grain on them at all, but they are very well done, and it fooled me in 2010. Nowadays I'm doing with the assessment sheets and so on, doing a deeper assessment than I used to do, so hopefully have improved a little bit since 2010. It would be very difficult to tidy this up anymore. It's slightly crazed here, and I think we'd have to repolish the whole piano to get it tidied up. This could be obviously shined up a bit more, but to tidy this crazing up, I think we'd have to repolish the whole piano. Now, internally, acoustically, the piano is in extremely good condition, a little bit dusty and so on, which we could certainly get rid of some of the dust. But these tuning pins are quite loose on my medium star lever here. So they're probably original ones, but the bass ones are not. So the strings here are probably original, and these ones are definitely not. There's much larger tuning pins. You have to put bigger tuning pins unless you change the tuning block. But these are very tight, which is excellent, and they're good quality bass strings too. They sound beautiful. That's a nice, rich, typical Bosendorfer tone. These aren't the original strings. The Bosendorfer finishes off in a different way, as we've said before. The soundboard's in perfect condition. There are no cracks whatsoever. The frame is a little bit dirty and slightly mottled, but I think we could improve that with cleaning. By the way, if you've got a Bosendorfer grand and you can't find the serial number, it's on the soundboard right next to the dampers here, and it's really quite hard to read, and sometimes it's covered with dust and sometimes it's almost obliterated, but we did manage to read that and date it in 1925. And Bosendorfers also have this other number on the bridge here and in other parts of the casework very often. It's a bit like Bechstein. They have two numbers, which is very confusing. People give that as a serial number, but it isn't a serial number. It's a number that I'm trying to correlate with the serial numbers and make a list, but not quite sure how they correlate at the moment. If you're in the trade and have an idea, then please let me know. By the way, Bosendorfer, Bluthner, and some other makes are individually strung, whereas Steinway, Bechstein, Yamaha, most other makes, they go round the pin. In other words, two strings share the same pin. So two strings share the same hitch pin. They go round and back up again, which means you don't have to replace the string if you break it, because they normally break at the tuning pin. And then you can just unwind a little bit on one of the tuning pins, wind it back on the other, wind it round the pin, and you don't have to change the string. The advantage being that if you have to replace the string, you have to also wait for it to settle in. It might not quite match the other strings and so on. So although this is meant to be more stable, if you're in the trade and would like to comment on that, it'd be really useful. Though the idea of this is meant to be more stable, but I think that generally Steinways, Bechsteins, Yamahas, they are very stable and they share the same pins. So it really isn't necessary, I think. Here's a Gores and Kalman grand piano, for instance. You see the same, these two strings are coming down, sharing the same pin and going back up. So you can just wind the string down on one tuning pin, take it further around, and then wind it up on the other. And there's still enough coil to make it not have to change the string. The action of the piano is in extremely good condition. The hammers are replaced, and there's not much wear on them at all, really. So there's plenty of use left, and they have a brilliant tone. They're excellent tone hammers. And these rollers here, they're slightly flat. You could replace the rollers. The hammers are a little bit down, a bit low. They're about 50 millimeters from the string. There should be normally about 47, perhaps even 45. So we could gain a little bit on the touch by raising them up, and that could be done by replacing the rollers. Will certainly bring them up slightly, because the roller will be more round, it'll go higher up, and that'll be an excellent job to do. And once we replace the rollers, then we can fine regulate them. They shouldn't be resting on the rail here, so that's something we can certainly do to improve the piano. The pins here are very tight, so that's good news. Something we routinely do these days is to lubricate the center rail here, the balance rail, and that's done with talc. We've mentioned many times before, so we can lift the keys up and see they're not falling down as they would in a new piano. When that's done, they will fall down if we lift them up like this. I've raised this up a little bit so we can lift them up and see that they definitely could do with lubricating, and that'll make the action feel slightly smoother. I should have mentioned, if we change the rollers, we'll also put talc lubricant on them as well, as you get in new pianos. Or you could put talc lubricant on these. It's not an essential job to do. We could raise the hammers up without replacing the rollers. It feels slightly smoother if we replace the rollers, but not that much different. Other regulation, which we've shown in other videos, is generally good. So it checks really nicely, and if we lift my finger slightly off the key, then it goes upwards. The spring tension is almost exactly right, so that's good news as well. And generally the regulation is good. It's checking at the right place. Something I've not shown for a long time is this beautiful damper system that they have, where you can fine regulate using these little capstans they put on. So in terms of where the dampers lift to the rod, then you can fine regulate there. You can also use these spoons. I don't use those very much, but certainly fine regulation there is very useful. And notice that extra hinge, which helps the damper to lie very flat on the strings. So it's a fine piano and in generally very good condition. We sold it in 2010, and there's certainly some jobs that we do nowadays that we didn't do in those days, so hopefully we've improved a bit. Lubricating balance rail and rollers is something we would definitely do, and possibly replacing the rollers. That's not essential, but definitely regulation, either without replacing the rollers or with replacing, will be slightly different. It wouldn't make a huge difference replacing the rollers, but it's something we would probably do nowadays if it was our own piano in stock. Pitch raise, slight pitch raise. It's really almost at pitch, and it's pretty much in tune, so it's a very stable piano. And the touch weight, well, if we do lubricate the balance rail, that'll come down slightly. It's already quite low in the bass here, so it's slightly uneven. 40 certainly, 50 would be normal, or 40, 48 or so. That's actually a 50 there. I couldn't read it very well. That's actually says 50. Now that's exactly spot on, and these are pretty much spot on. Just some of the bass is light, strangely enough. So lubricating the balance rail, then we just double check the weight after that. So that's an assessment of a Bosendorfer 170 grand piano, made in 1925, and it's a fine instrument. There's a few things I think we can do to just improve it, and obviously repolishing is another aspect I've been talking about. So I hope that's been helpful. If you've got a piano that you'd like assessed, please do write to info@robertspianos.com, and we'd be really happy to do so.